My name is Elise. I'm 37, and I think I'm disappearing. Not in some metaphysical, poetic way, though I wish it were that pretty. No, I mean the slow, choking kind of fading, like when you're screaming underwater and no one even glances up from the surface. I've been with Josh for 13 years. Married for 8. If you looked at us from the outside, you'd probably say we're fine, boring, but fine. We have a house with white walls and gray throw pillows. A dog that sheds too much. 2 toothbrushes that lean toward each other in the cup like they're in love. But we're not. Not anymore. When my sister dropped her son off at our place last weekend, some emergency spa cancellation or something, I didn't think anything of it. I set up a blanket for him in the living room and queued up his favorite cartoons. Josh was still asleep upstairs. It was just supposed to be a normal Saturday. Until my nephew, wide-eyed and fidgety, maybe 6 or 7, looked up at me with those honest, unfiltered eyes and said, "Do you and Uncle Josh still love each other?" I laughed. It was automatic, a weird hiccup of a sound. But it was the kind of laugh people do when they're caught. Like I'd been discovered in the middle of something shameful. And I haven't stopped thinking about it since. Because the thing is, I don't know how to answer him. There was a time when Josh made my entire body feel like a tuning fork. He'd come home and kiss me, not a peck, not something perfunctory, but a hand on my hip, fingers in my hair kind of kiss. We used to cook barefoot in the kitchen at midnight. We used to fall asleep tangled in each other like the world would fall apart if we let go. But now? He kisses me like he's clocking in. His hand grazes the side of my arm in the morning, not to wake me with affection but like he's checking if I'm warm-blooded. We still cuddle sometimes, but it's stiff, like he's trying to remember a position we once loved. His body against mine doesn't spark anything anymore. Not even ache. That might be the worst part, I don't even ache for him. I ache for who we were. For the version of us that used to look at each other with hunger and curiosity. Now it's like we're both waiting for the other to blink first. I find myself dressing up for the grocery store. Putting on mascara to buy onions. Because I crave being seen. Not just looked at, seen. Josh doesn't notice anymore when I wear something new. Or maybe he does and doesn't know how to say anything. Maybe we're both stuck in the etiquette of long-term love, where silence replaces attention and comfort disguises decay. The physical part? It's not gone, it's worse than gone. It's mechanical now. Like we've memorized the motions but forgot the meaning. I find myself bracing for it sometimes. Not out of fear. Just, out of grief. Like I'm pretending to be the woman I used to be, hoping muscle memory will save me. I remember the exact moment I realized something had shifted. It was 6 months ago. I was making dinner, something silly and warm, like baked ziti, and Josh came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. For a second, I leaned into him. I let myself pretend it was real. But then his phone buzzed on the counter and I felt him stiffen. He didn't pull away, but something in his body did. Subtle. Maybe imperceptible to anyone else. But not to me. I looked at his reflection in the microwave door, and he looked absent. Like he was touching me out of obligation. Like this was part of his evening routine, somewhere between brushing his teeth and checking the locks. And I remember thinking, this is what it feels like to be held by someone who's already let go. So when my nephew asked that question with all the gentle audacity only children can get away with, I didn't answer. Because the truth is, I don't know if we still love each other. I just know I don't recognize us anymore. Josh is a physical therapist. The kind people trust with their bodies. He works with athletes, dancers, veterans, people who need to feel safe when they're vulnerable. It's something I used to admire about him. Still do, in some abstract way. He has this calm, confident energy that puts people at ease. It's probably why I fell in love with him. But somewhere along the way, I became the exception. We're in the kitchen again. He's chopping vegetables like he's mad at them, and I'm standing near the fridge pretending to look for something I don't need. We keep moving around each other, saying things like pass me that and can you stir this, like we're trying to rebuild our rhythm. But it's gone. And I can tell he feels it too, because lately, he's started trying harder. In the only way he knows how. At night, he reaches for me. His hands are always so sure, so practiced. He kisses my neck with intent, not curiosity. And I lie there, frozen in this unbearable middle ground, not cold enough to pull away, not warm enough to lean in. One night last week, I finally said something. I feel like you only touch me when you want sex. He blinked, stunned. That's not true. Then when do you touch me just to be close? He looked confused. Genuinely confused. Like I was speaking a language he used to be fluent in but had forgotten the grammar of. Elise, he said, brushing a strand of hair from my face, I'm trying. I thought this was what you wanted. You always used to want this. But this felt like a script. One he memorized years ago and kept reciting long after the plot changed. The truth is, I want him to sit on the couch with me and just be quiet together. I want him to ask how my day was and wait for the real answer. I want his hand on the small of my back in the grocery store, not just on my thigh in bed. I want him to see me, really see me, before he reaches for my body. But how do you say that without sounding needy? Without sounding like you're punishing someone for trying? Last night, it got worse. Josh booked us a couples massage, a surprise. He said we needed to reconnect. I agreed, even though the thought of lying half-naked next to him while strangers rubbed oil into our skin made my stomach twist. We dropped my nephew off with my sister, and as we walked into the spa, I tried to match his enthusiasm. He was beaming. Like he thought this would fix us. When we lay on the tables, I looked at him, really looked. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow, peaceful. He looked like the man I married. Like someone safe. But I couldn't relax. The irony didn't escape me, his job is helping people feel their bodies again, and I couldn't feel mine at all. Afterward, while we waited in the lobby, sipping cucumber water, he slid his hand onto my thigh. Too high. Too eager. See, he said, grinning. Not bad, right? I smiled. But inside, I felt hollow. Like I was performing. Again. That's when my sister texted. She said everything was fine, except that my nephew had asked a very awkward question when the massage came up. Apparently, he told her, Aunt Elise didn't look like she wanted her massage. Uncle Josh kept smiling, but she looked tired in her eyes. Tired in her eyes. That's what did it. That's what cracked me wide open. Because he saw it. A 7-year-old saw something Josh refuses to acknowledge. I keep replaying the moment in the spa, how Josh was trying so hard to touch me while I was silently screaming for him to hear me. It's not that I don't want him. It's that I want all of him. I want the part that listens. The part that's quiet and uncertain. The part that doesn't always need a solution, just presence. But Josh thinks love is something you do, rub, grab, fix. I think love is something you feel, even when there's nothing left to touch. And right now, we're speaking two different languages. And neither of us is translating. Josh came up behind me while I was folding laundry. I was halfway through a pile of mismatched socks and worn-out t-shirts, my mind elsewhere, probably circling the same questions I've been asking myself in the shower, in traffic, in line at the pharmacy. He slid his arms around my waist, pressing his chest against my back. Hey, babe, he said, voice low in that tone I used to find sexy. Missed you today. I didn't move. I couldn't. It wasn't that I didn't love him in that moment, it's that I didn't recognize what this was. This creeping expectation that every touch had a destination. That every casual intimacy was a prelude to something heavier. His hand started to roam a little, brushing just under my shirt, familiar, but not tender. I stiffened. Not dramatically. Just enough for him to notice. "You okay?" he asked, leaning in to kiss my neck. I forced a smile, even as I shifted out of his arms under the excuse of reaching for another sock. "Just tired." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he gave my butt a playful slap. "Well, maybe I can help you unwind later." I laughed, a short, broken sound. He meant it as flirtation, I know that. But it landed like pressure. I want it. God, I do. I miss craving him. I miss being lit up by his touch. But now, every time he reaches for me, I feel like I'm being asked a question I don't know how to answer. At dinner that night, we sat across from each other like strangers playing married. He told me about a client, some football player with a shoulder injury, and I nodded and stirred my pasta. I made noises at the right places. I smiled when I was supposed to. When he reached across the table and took my hand, I let him. His thumb rubbed circles on my palm. He was trying. I saw that. Felt that. And I hated that I didn't feel more. After we cleared the dishes, I lingered in the kitchen. He came up behind me again, kissed my shoulder this time, slow and deliberate. "Come to bed early tonight," he murmured. "We haven't just been together in a while." I turned around and saw it in his eyes, not lust, but hope. Maybe even loneliness. And I hated myself for hesitating. We did go to bed early. I curled up next to him, skin against skin. He kissed me like he used to, or tried to. His mouth was warm, familiar. His hand slid along my side, slow and soft. He was gentle. Attentive. But inside, I was gone. I was floating above my body, watching it play out like a scene I'd already seen too many times. I kissed him back, but my lips felt heavy. When his hand moved lower, I flinched, just barely. A flicker, really. He paused. Pulled back. "Elise," he said, quiet. I shook my head before I could stop myself. "It's not you. I can't tonight." Josh sat up. "You never can anymore." There it was. The frustration. Not shouted, just placed on the table like an accusation wrapped in disappointment. I pulled the blanket up around me like armor. "I don't know what's wrong with me." He didn't respond. Just sighed and laid back down, turning toward the wall. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding with shame, confusion, and something else I couldn't name. Something aching. Because it's not that I don't want him. It's that everything feels charged now. Like every hug has a weight. Every kiss is a contract. And all I want is to be touched without it meaning more. Or touched only when the meaning is there. But instead, I keep wondering, why does everything have to turn into sex? We were at my sister's for dinner. Josh had offered to grill, trying to be helpful, trying to participate, something he's been doing more lately. Little gestures. Big silences. My nephew was in the backyard, running barefoot across the grass with a popsicle and superhero cape. I was sitting on the patio, sipping wine I didn't want, pretending the ache in my chest was heartburn. Josh came over, kissed my temple, and set a plate in front of me. Steak. Grilled vegetables. Everything I used to love before food started tasting like cardboard. "You good?" he asked, eyes searching mine. "Yeah," I said. "Thanks." He smiled and turned to my brother-in-law. They started talking about some sports thing I didn't follow. My sister leaned over to me and whispered, "You two look better lately." "Are you?" And that's when it started. The feeling, that rising, itchy pressure in my throat. I wanted to say yes. I wanted it to be true. Instead, I felt my eyes blur. I blinked fast, hoping no one noticed. Josh turned back to me, totally unaware. Hey, remember that couple's massage place? I booked it again for next weekend. Figured it could be our new thing. My nephew, who'd just darted back to the table, perked up. Aunt Elise didn't like the last massage. She looked sad. Remember, Mommy? I told you. Everyone went still. Josh chuckled awkwardly, clearly trying to make it light. Well, guess I'll leave you a better tip next time. I stared at my plate. My nephew's voice echoed in my head, she looked sad. It wasn't funny. It wasn't harmless. It was true. And I broke. I didn't throw my fork or scream or make a scene. I just started crying. Quietly at first, like my body was betraying me without permission. My shoulders shook, and I covered my face with my napkin, but it was too late. Everyone saw. Josh put his hand on my back. Elise? Babe, what's going on? I pulled away from his touch so fast you'd think he burned me. Can you please just not touch me right now? He froze. My sister looked like she wanted to melt into the patio furniture. My nephew blinked, confused. Josh stood up, voice low and sharp. Okay. Seriously, what the hell is happening? 1 minute we're fine, the next you're acting like I'm hurting you just by caring. I'm not acting, I said, louder than I meant to. And we're not fine, Josh. We haven't been for a long time. You just keep trying to fix it with your hands, and I'm screaming from the inside out. He stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. All you ever do is touch me. You think that's enough? You think if you just rub my back or kiss my neck, I'll forget that I feel alone in our marriage? So what, you don't want me to touch you at all now, he snapped. You want me to just sit across from you like roommates until you decide to feel something again? I want you to see me, Josh. I shouted. I want you to stop trying to sleep with me and actually ask me how I am. I want to feel safe when you hold me, not like it's a countdown to sex. Silence. Even my nephew stopped fidgeting. I pushed back from the table and walked into the house, straight to the bathroom. Locked the door. I sat on the edge of the tub, sobbing into my hands like a child. I didn't care about the dinner. Or the awkwardness. Or the looks. What I felt was shame. Not because I said too much, but because I'd waited too long to say any of it. Josh had been trying. In his own way. He didn't know how to reach me, but at least he was reaching. And I'd recoiled so many times he probably thought I didn't love him anymore. But I do. I just can't keep pretending that physical touch is enough to patch the emotional holes between us. And now, I don't know if I broke something that can't be fixed. The worst part? As I sat there with mascara streaking down my cheeks, I whispered the one thought that won't leave me alone: why does everything have to turn into sex? It's been 12 days since the patio. Since I cried in front of my family and told the truth out loud. Since Josh stopped reaching for me. The house is quieter now. Not in an angry way, not stormy. Just still. Like something is missing, but neither of us wants to say what. We've become polite, efficient. Roommates with shared chores and different kinds of loneliness. He still cooks dinner. I still do the laundry. We still watch the same show before bed, sitting at opposite ends of the couch with a blanket stretched awkwardly between us like some unspoken truce. And I miss him. God, I miss him. Not just his hands or his kiss. I miss the way he used to rest his chin on my shoulder while I brushed my teeth. I miss the way his laughter would rumble in his chest and how he'd instinctively reach for my knee when we were sitting next to each other. I even miss the arguments that meant something, the passion, the heat. Now, it's like we're both afraid to make a sound. I caught him watching me last night. I was curled up in bed, rereading a book I've read 10 times, and I could feel his eyes on me. When I looked up, he looked away too fast. It was the first time I saw something real on his face in days, not frustration, not pity. Just pain. And I remembered he's human. Not a villain. Not clueless. Just a man who wanted to love me the way he knew how. But I had shut that door. I hear him sigh more lately. Deep, hollow sounds, like he's trying to exhale whatever's built up between us. He doesn't try to kiss me goodnight anymore. He barely says good morning. And part of me feels relief. The other part feels gutted. This isn't what I wanted. I didn't want him to stop trying, I just wanted him to listen. I didn't want to push him away, I wanted him to come closer in a different way. But maybe I broke something I didn't know how to fix. I caught myself doing something stupid today. I went through our old texts. Back when we used to flirt in grocery store aisles and send each other blurry pictures of coffee cups and inside jokes. Back when a photo of a stupid squirrel on the porch would get a string of heart emojis. Back when he still looked at me like I was his. I stared at those old messages and wondered who that girl was. The one who used to send winking selfies in the car and sneak up behind him in the kitchen just to kiss the back of his neck. And I thought, maybe the real loss here isn't just about him. Maybe it's about who I stopped being, too. I blamed him for turning every touch into sex. But maybe I forgot how to make room for gentleness. Maybe I stopped inviting the softness and only noticed when the pressure came. It's easier to be angry than vulnerable. I see that now. And Josh, for all his flaws, has always chosen touch because words are harder for him. And I chose silence because I didn't want to be rejected when I needed something different. So now we're both starving in a house full of everything we used to have. Tonight, he's on the couch, flipping through channels without watching. I stand in the hallway for a long time, just watching him, not as the man who failed me, but as the man who's been hurting in his own quiet way. And I make a choice. Not because I'm sure it'll work. Not because I suddenly feel ready. But because I still believe he's worth knowing again, and I want to be known, too. I take a deep breath, walk into the living room, and sit down beside him. Close enough for him to feel me there. But not close enough to touch. Not yet. We didn't talk that first night I sat beside him. I just leaned into the couch cushion, close enough to share space, far enough to feel the space still there. He didn't move. He didn't pull away. But he didn't reach for me either. The next morning, I made coffee. Left his mug out the way he likes it, black, chipped on one side. He saw it on the counter, paused for a second too long, then took it without a word. That was the beginning. Not of fixing. But of not avoiding. A few nights later, we ended up in bed at the same time. Neither of us touched our phones. Just lay there in the quiet, our bodies facing opposite directions, breathing in the same stale air. It was unbearable and tender at once. I whispered, I don't know how to be close to you anymore. Josh didn't answer for a while. I thought maybe he'd fallen asleep. Then he said, I keep waiting for you to want me again. But I think I stopped asking if you even felt safe with me. I turned toward him. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling like it might offer a solution. I didn't, I said quietly. Not because you hurt me. But because I didn't know how to ask for what I needed. And I was afraid you'd feel rejected. So I let myself disappear instead. He swallowed hard. His throat moved like he was fighting something back. Finally, he turned to face me. His fingers brushed my hand, not a grab, just an offering. I didn't pull away this time. I don't want us to be polite strangers, he said. But I also don't want to keep pretending sex means connection when it doesn't. I want more. And I want to learn how to give you more. But I need to know you're still in this. I looked at him, really looked. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I owed him a performance. I want you, I said, voice trembling. And maybe that's where we start. With just wanting to find each other again. He nodded. No promises. No pressure. Just presence. Josh reached out and tucked a piece of hair behind my ear. His hand lingered for a second on my cheek, and I leaned into it, eyes closing. He kissed my forehead. Soft. Slow. No weight behind it but care. That night, we fell asleep facing each other, no expectation, no urgency. Just two people who'd stopped pretending they weren't hurting. Two people willing to try again, even if they weren't sure what trying looked like. It wasn't a grand fix. There was no dramatic gesture or overnight recovery. But the silence felt warmer. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone lying next to him. Just beginning. If you had told me a year ago that the moment that unraveled my marriage would come from a 6-year-old's innocent observation, I would have laughed. But that day, sitting on a patio surrounded by people who thought we were fine, my nephew looked up with that wide-eyed honesty only children have and said, "Aunt Elise looked sad during her massage." And just like that, the curtain dropped. I realized how long I'd been pretending. I don't think I was sad during that massage because of anything Josh did. Not exactly. It wasn't one big betrayal or cruel word. No cheating. No screaming fights. Just slow erosion. Like the tide wearing away the shore while we both looked the other way. I was sad because I felt invisible. Because I'd allowed myself to become a woman who smiled through clenched teeth while being touched in ways that no longer felt loving. I was sad because I had a husband who thought he was showing me affection, and I was too afraid, or maybe too ashamed, to tell him it felt like pressure. I used to crave his touch. The way he'd pull me into him while cooking, how his hand would settle on the small of my back without thinking. I remember once he kissed my ankle just because he said he missed parts of me people forget to love. I fell hard for that man. But over time, that kind of tenderness got replaced with habit. With assumption. And I stopped saying anything because I didn't want to hurt him. I told myself it was just a phase, that stress or hormones or whatever would pass. Instead, I passed, day after day, through my own life like a ghost. I learned something painful but important: desire without emotional intimacy feels like invasion. And love without listening? It's just noise. Josh and we're still here. Still figuring it out. And no, not in some perfect, tied up in a bow kind of way. Some days we're still quiet. Some days I still recoil when I feel him reach for me in bed, not because I don't love him, but because I still haven't healed the part of me that learned to flinch first. But now, when I pull away, I tell him why. And he listens. We've started asking each other real questions again. Not "did you walk the dog?" or "what's for dinner?" but things like, "Are you feeling close to me today? Did I make you feel seen this week?" Questions that feel risky because they're real. And when I can't answer, I don't fake it. We're rebuilding trust, not just between each other, but inside ourselves. If you're listening to this and wondering if you're broken because you don't want to be touched the way you used to, you're not. If you feel guilty for needing conversation before closeness, or gentleness before heat, you're not crazy. You're not cold. You're not failing at being a woman or a wife or a partner. You're asking to be met where you are. And that is brave. We don't talk enough about how love changes over time. How it becomes less about passion and more about presence. How sometimes the sexiest thing in the world is someone asking, "Do you feel safe with me right now?" And how sometimes, it's your 6-year-old nephew saying something wildly innocent that holds up a mirror you've been avoiding. I'm still learning how to speak my needs. Still unlearning the idea that love is supposed to feel effortless. Because the truth is, it isn't. It's a decision, every day, to be curious about the person beside you. And about the person you've become. So, no. What my nephew said wasn't profound. He didn't mean to spark a breakdown. He just saw me. And for the first time in a long time, I saw myself too. That's where this story really began.